कैसी है? मस्त.
So I'm absolutely delighted to have Shashank Khaitan with me. Every time we've spoken, it's always been such a great conversation, whether it's a phone or an Instagram live that we did in lockdown. So Shashank, a warm welcome to you on Filme Shilmy, and thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much, Anuj. It's a pleasure seeing you again.
Yes, it's an absolute pleasure to see you too. Look, Govinda Naam Mera is a dark comedy crime thriller, which I guess in a way kind of amalgamates adultery with a very commercial Hindi film appeal. So it seems like a fresh world and quite a risky concept, I think, for you to discover. So, what did you actually realize about yourself as a storyteller from this experience?
So I think firstly, it's not as dark as I think, though it's a murder mystery. But I think the overall tone of the film is very light. It's a comedy. It's something which I enjoy writing. I even when I write my love stories, I ensure that there's a little bit of banter, there's a little bit of quirk. The characters are funny. They are self-deprecating. They don't mind laughing at themselves, which I think is a good reflection of who I am as a person. I don't mind sharing a joke on my own self, having fun with it. So I think initially that's the kind of tone we are trying to capture. And I think the genre is exciting, a comedy thriller, a murder mystery, which I think, it's not been done a lot in Hindi cinema,
Yeah.
but West has a history of doing it, whether you take Knives Out, and Knives Out 2 is about to come out. I think one of the films which I won't call it a pure comic thriller, but a very good murder mystery was Andhadhun, and the way things came in that genre, even a Drishyam and a Drishyam 2 are exciting. Of course, not so much a comedy, but the thriller is very exciting, very engaging. So I think when I set out writing it, the original set of events were a lot of news articles I was reading along many years, which spoke about adultery. It spoke about the bungalow, a man losing his bungalow, people being cheated. It's something which is very common in the Indian milieu, and I wanted to kind of have a take on that in terms of what a common man goes through, all the troubles that he can go through, and how does he fight it when things go absolutely wrong in his life. So I think for me, that is what Govinda Naam Mera is. Govinda is a character from Mumbai. He's a Mumbai boy, what we call, he speaks the Mumbai Hindi language. He has a troubled life. He has a bungalow which he's about to lose. He has a wife he has a bad relationship with. He has a girl whom he likes, and he hopes that at some time in the future he can be together. And other than that, there are other more ensemble set of characters: a step brother, a stepmother, a best friend lawyer, and many other these characters which make up his world. And his world is one of misery. His world is one of where everyone's taking his case, and then to add to his troubles in life, there's a murder that happens. And then how his life unfolds and what happens forms the crux of the entire film. It was very challenging to write, because you want to try as a writer to close as many loopholes as possible, make it as logically correct. And yet at the same time, it was fun to write because it's a mad universe and you can just go all out. You can just express yourself in funny ways and more ways than you thought you can as a writer. So I think something which I really cherish. It's a film that's really close to my heart, something which I really enjoyed writing and making.
Right. No, very well said. And I think, it's interesting because we've been seeing quite a few comedy thrillers this year. Hotstar even had Good Luck Jerry earlier. Recently, Netflix had Monica Oh My Darling, two very, very good films. Right. So I guess as a filmmaker, I mean, how challenging is it for you to present that dark element, but then also retain your style of, masala films, which you kind of have made, that sort of Hindi commercial films that you've made. How tough was it to synergize both these styles? And do you think this whole new genre that I think we're seeing emerging now, like this whole dark comedy thriller sort of popularity that we're seeing now, do you think that's a trend, or do you think that's something which will definitely have a lasting impact now?
So to answer the first set of questions is, yes, the genre is picking up. You mentioned the film, whether it was a Good Luck Jerry, whether it was a Monica Oh My Darling, and I think those are good additions to this genre. This genre, when it comes to writing, has always been there. A lot of novels and books have already presented it. There's a genre which is very popular in the writing world called cozy mysteries, which is basically just a simple story which seems like a day-to-day life of a very common individual, and suddenly it takes a dark turn, right? So that genre is quite popular when it comes to novels and storytelling. I think it's a good addition that it's getting into mainstream cinema across the board. Like I would say, even A Gone Girl, in a way, was a very dark story, but said in a very interesting way, where, in a certain sense, you had this wicked smile on your face that you kind of knew this girl's out to get him, and yet you were enjoying the trauma, if you can say it in a sadistic way, right? So I think the genre has been around. It's not very, it wasn't, I mean, Hindi cinema has actually had a lot of those in a fun way in different elements. You know, Hindi cinema is unique because it almost puts 4-5 genres together in one masala movie. And so we've always had shades of maybe a murder. Like I think Ajane Bhi Do Yaro is a good example of a dark comedy said much earlier. I think 70s or 80s is when that film came out. And it was also something which you can put in this genre. It was a film about a murder, and yet it was funny. It was extremely, extremely funny. So I think the tradition has been there. It's good that it's coming back. And whether it's here to stay, I think good movies are here to stay. And the films which are not, which people don't connect to, they kind of reject that. So I don't think so any genre is acceptable or unacceptable. I think people are looking for different ways to engage. Some people might want a cerebral experience. Some people might want an entertaining experience. Some people might want to be left with a darker end. Some people might want a happier end. So I think there's so many people in the world. They have different expectations from movies, and I think all filmmakers can find their audience and niche. So I don't think so we need to be very genre specific. I think what we need to do, or specifically what I focus on, is trying to be authentic in my own storytelling. That this is what I believe this story is. Try and set it in the best, say it in the best way possible, and hopefully there'll be enough audiences who like it and find joy in it.
You know what? You're right, and I do agree with you as well that it is, we have to be genre agnostic in that sense. But I must tell you, Shashank, everyone, every time they say that content hota hai, medium chahe kuch bhi ho, but there's been examples where I've watched a film that say is made for an OTT, for example, and I've watched it on my iPad, and then I've tried to watch it on my big television at home, and the impact is just not the same. At the same time, a Ponniyin Selvan, for example, I watched it on the big screen. I loved it. But somehow when I watched it at home, the impact just wasn't the same. And I do feel that the medium does play a huge role, I think, in determining how content will be consumed. Obviously, Govinda Naam Mera has that masaledar feel. It's got that really mass feel, and it looks like a really fun film as well. So, I mean, how do you think it will translate to audiences who are actually consuming it within their domestic domains?
I mean, it's an answer even I'm looking for. Would this film have done better in a theatrical release is a question mark. But unfortunately, we all forget that we don't forget, but we are undermining the impact of what the COVID pandemic has done to all of us. And suddenly, in the last 4 months, there is a euphoria, there is a certain excitement about not wearing masks, getting back into the open. But the situation about 7-8 months wasn't the same. It was rather bleak. There were a lot of question marks. The third lockdown was upon us early this year. So a lot of decisions which we took regarding Govinda Naam Mera was in those times. What we are seeing now is a result of those decisions. And I think back then when we took those decisions, they were correct. We had to, this film has had a bit of a journey. I wrote it in the first lockdown. I shot it in the second lockdown. There was a time when we felt the film is ready, and the third lockdown hit in. And then we weren't sure how cinemas are reacting. There was this bit of a guessing game going, in the trade, in the production houses, that this kind of content works and this kind of content does not work. So I think at some level, as a creative person, I had to let go of that and say that, you know what, I believe my story is good enough for any audience to consume, and they'll have a good time. Yes, there are certain films which are written and executed with a certain grammar in mind, with a certain scale in mind. But I do feel that Govinda Naam Mera has a balance of both. Though it's masaledar, it's yet a film which focuses more on the characters and storyline versus, say, the scale of the movie. or so-called the ambiotic, presentation of the film. So, for example, let's take a film like Knives Out. A Knives Out is as entertaining in cinemas as it is on an OTT platform. Take the case of a Drishyam. Take the case of a, and if I go in the comedy genre, and Andaz Apna Apna is still as funny and on television as it was in the theaters. So I think there are certain genres which can transcend both, which can kind of have a good impact cinematically as well, and so on the small screen. And I do believe Govinda Naam Mera has those qualities. I think in its heart, it's a film about human emotions. It's a film about quirky characters, and it's a film about interpersonal relationships between all these people and the madness of the universe. So I feel, yes, I'm very confident had it come in the theaters, people would have enjoyed it. But I'm equally confident that even on an OTT, it will still have the desired result. If four of you all sit as a family in the evening sitting together, I think a family will have a good laugh and yet be engaged in the so-called thrilling ride of it. And similarly, even if you're alone watching it on a smaller screen, you might still have fun with some of the jokes and stuff. The difference could be the laughter might have been a community laughter in a theater. Here you might have a smile on your face or a smirk. But I feel given the time, I mean, we should, given whatever has happened to humanity in the last 2 years, I feel very fortunate that we still have a medium where I can showcase the movie. And I'm just happy that it's out there. People are appreciating the film for its freshness, for its humor, for its so-called thrilling elements. And I'm sure it'll transcend and they'll have a good time.
Definitely. It's interesting you talked about the changes that the film has gone through. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, was this called Mr. Lele before? It was titled Mr. Lele before, right?
When there was a time when Varun, Dhawan and me were discussing this same film, we were about to do it. But it has gone through a lot of changes because that was pre-pandemic. Then the pandemic gave me time to work on it. Then when Varun was there, it was a slightly different character. With Vicky coming on, it's definitely a different character. Varun has done dance films before. So at that time, he was not a background dancer in the film. Whereas when Vicky came in, I had the liberty of exploring that side because Vicky and Kiara had never done films like that. So, of course, with every actor, you customize the film a little bit so that you bank on their strengths and kind of tailor make it a little bit. So I think it's a fairly different film from that sense. But yes, it's on similar lines. And but as I said, you make certain changes because you get so much time to work on the script, and then based on which are the actors who are going to be part of your film.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, one thing that I've always loved about your film, Shashank, and you also know it as well, is the fact that your films highlight the voice of people from non-metropolitan cities. Since you're from Nashik, do you feel like the lead characters, I mean, way to Humpty, Badri, or even Vicky's character in this film, Govinda, do you kind of feel, the characters actually represent you in some form or shape? Do you feel like it kind of you internalize maybe a younger self or a self of yours that you may have not even quite comprehended about yourself through these characters as well?
I think well said. I think it's a mixture of all of those. I mean, it's a little bit of my own experiences in life. It's a bit of certain things I wish I could have done and I didn't do. And those are what my characters do. And a little bit of just being observant in life, watching people around me. So when Vicky and Kiara, who play background dancers in the movie, it's got to do with me doing so many films where I have had dancers on set, choreographers on set, just kind of watching them and saying that, hey, if one day I write on a film on them, how could it, how would my main leads react to that? So it's about experiences. Yes, coming from a smaller town or a two-tier city in India, you have a certain set of thoughts, processes. There's a way you view the world. There's a way you view metropolitan cities. And you kind of always retain that flavor in your writing and in the way you present your characters. But I don't make any conscious decision that that's what I want to do. I just let organically flow with my writing and see how the characters develop. And there is no attempt of putting them in a particular universe or trying to bring them out of it. I just react to what my storyline is. I first try and get my beginning, middle, and end in place so that I know this is going to be the flow of my story. And with that, then I start developing these characters. And more than anything else, I try to be true to that beginning, middle, and end, and write them through that journey so that you feel that okay, it's an organic journey right till the end. So that's really my process of writing. It's not overthought in terms of what I want to showcase of a particular universe, but there's always an attempt of trying to build a universe which is mine, a universe which is a bit personal.
Right. And I think, Shashank, we're in a time where the industry is evolving, it's changing. I think the Bollywood and the Hindi cinema that we recognize now is definitely not the one that we saw pre-pandemic. Though I must tell you that successes of films like Bhool Bhulaiya 2 and Drishyam 2 have actually proven that not only are commercial and mainstream films still in demand, but nostalgia is a very huge factor, I think, in selling a film. Um, do you kind of feel that lockdown and COVID-19 have increased the sentimental value in the movies that are being presented?
Oh, I mean, we are all discussing it. We are all trying to find our answers. We're trying to do that. Those are good case in points, but yet then again, there is a Brahmastra, which is an original film, and it has an impact on people. You can say it had the visual effects and all of that. I think we are all trying to understand, but I think the more we try and understand, we are getting too academic about it rather than being instinctive about it. I think stories are instinctive. I think any kind of content which you want to put out, it can't be too rehearsed. It can't be too, as I said, analyzed. Like I can't make an Excel sheet about what's the film that's going to work. I really need to kind of react to a story and feel what's the heart of the story, and hopefully it will get communicated. So I feel films which are franchise-based films will always have a certain nostalgic value attached to it. They'll always have a certain audience which has already watched part one or something in that series. So there's a connection to that. But I yet feel that ultimately we are all seeking originality. We are all seeking trying to create content which is something which we have not done. Like one of the reasons why I wrote a Govinda Naam Mera was because I'd already done 3 love stories. So I was like, I want to do something new. I don't want to just do love stories all the time, right? So I think that drive to do something new will always excite filmmakers and storytellers. And I think if an audience connects to the nerve of that character, I think even an original film can do those numbers. So I really feel we need to go back to just saying that, hey, this is what I did instinctively earlier. This is what I'm going to do instinctively now. What changes from a screenplay or a writing perspective is that maybe in today's times, I don't need to spend, say, 20 minutes establishing a character. I need to be a smarter writer and establish my character in 2 scenes, get into the conflict faster. So maybe those could be the learnings with so much of media coming in, social media coming in. Today, an influencer rides on his personality, right? All influencer content that we follow is because of the personality of the character. So when I log on to an influencer, I really want to get straight into the conflict because I already know his personality. I am already attached to him. And now I know. So he doesn't need to reintroduce himself. So we're getting into a time whereby I would say the traditional backstories, though important, people don't want to get into so much buildup of it. They really want to attack into who this character is and immediately attach themselves to his journey. So I think those are the kind of changes writing will see. But again, as I said, we need to be instinctive about it and we need to be all heart about it. That from my heart, I feel this is the best film to make and we should go ahead and make that. And I think audiences will come back for that.
And I think one thing that I've noticed as well, that of course the South films have, become the new mainstream now. And I think it's wonderful that how Indian cinema is now recognized as one entity and that collaborations are becoming much more frequent and prominent as well, which I think is great. So being a producer yourself, you said you want to, I think it's all about the original content. So what sort of original content should you get the opportunity to back in South? What sort of content would you be keen and interested in?
I mean, today with me being a co-producer and producer along with Dharma, there is content of all styles coming to me or being pitched to me. There are stories which are set in one room and then there are stories set in multiple universes. So I get to hear all of it. I have in fact recently got a couple of pitches from some of my ex film school alumni settled in the south who have ideas regarding some film they want to make in the local language over there, and that's also exciting. So I don't have any so-called notions or rules about what I want to do. I react completely instinctively to any content which comes to me. When Bhoot came to me as a horror film, I just thought it's an exciting idea to have a horror film set on a ship which floats across the shores of Mumbai. And I thought that's a great story. Luckily, I had Karan backing me to do that. And we took an attempt at that to make a film which nobody had attempted before. When
Yeah.
a Good Newwz came to us, we said, hey, this sounds like a mad film. Let's try that. Similarly, when a Yodha was pitched to me, which was an hijack-based action film on a flight, that sounded exciting. So I think even me, I'm learning the ropes. I'm trying to understand my own voice as a producer, director, writer. And I think the good thing today is you never feel settled because you
Yeah.
always want to kind of push the game. You always want to kind of say that, you know what, I want to give something new to my audiences. And yet at the same time, provide them with some familiarity in terms of maybe the texture or the dialogues or the humor, which remind them and say that, hey, this is the same guy who gave us this, but he's given us this in a newer form. So I think, again, I think the reaction needs to come from within. You hear a story and you feel, hey, this is a good story to be told. You try and tell it.
Right. I think it's interesting you say that as well, because I think as a producer though, like obviously I'm sure there are much more other bigger responsibilities you have, besides the creative aspect. So what are some of the factors you do consider in mind when you choose to back a project?
I think it's simple. One is it a story I want to tell to begin with? After that, it comes down to saying that how can we make the most how can we make the best film? There are certain films which require a certain budget. You need to provide that. So first of all, you need to know that do you have the capability to back it? Do you have the capability to ensure that you do justice to the script? I always look at the script as my Bible and say that everything that we do in a film needs to be for that script. Whether it's the casting, whether it's the budgets, whether it's the post production support that we can provide to the young filmmakers. So for me, it's always about how true can we stay to the script, how much we can provide. And if there are certain, sometimes there is a film which you really want to say, a budget is a problem, then you kind of problem solve it, troubleshoot it, and kind of come to an answer that, hey, can I make this film in a bit cheaper? Can I, without losing any value, without losing any of the visuals, still achieve this movie and still make it at a certain cost? So I think you start understanding the logistics behind it. And yet at the same time, you also know that the audience does not care. They are
Yeah.
going to look at a film and just say that, was it good? Was it bad? Was the VFX good? Was it bad? They don't care whether you spend 7 CR on it or 70 CR on it. They really want a good experience. So I think as a producer, you immediately need to start visualizing the film and hope that your people you're backing are going to make that film and provide them all kind of support, sometimes creative, sometimes experience, sometimes logistical, sometimes manpower, so that they have the tools to execute that movie.
Indeed. And I think milestones generally have quite changed. I mean, for example, during the pre-pandemic, I feel like the 100 crore mark initially seemed like a huge benchmark. It was like something that people had wanted to achieve and all of that. But I think nowadays, especially with the sort of disasters that we've seen in not just in Hindi film industry, but I think generally in film industries as well, it's almost a reassurance and a lifeline. I feel the 100 crore mark to keep the industry alive, as a constant reminder that हम अभी यहाँ पर है, like we've not gone anywhere. So I guess how ominous, if I can say so, is the pressure of box office nowadays?
So again, just to break it in two parts, one is that people really are undermining the impact of the pandemic, which has happened for 2 years. People almost, it seems that in 3 weeks things are going to get okay. People who have been unemployed for 2 years, we have gone through something which is unprecedented in the world. Humanity hasn't seen it. And we are expecting that things are going to be back to normal in 6 months. I think that's a bit of an undue pressure on everyone. Like my wife runs an educational institute in Nashik. I've seen how tough it is to collect fees just from students. And there was a time when we always believed that even in a recession, the education business will never suffer because people want to educate their children. And this is for the first time we realize that people are ready to drop out of schools because they didn't have the money to pay fees. So when you look at that kind of an impact in a socio-economic country like India, you then realize that, okay, pre-pandemic, there was maybe a scenario where a middle-class family decided that, okay, you know what, we can watch 2 movies a month. Today is a time when they decide, no, we can watch only 1 movie in 2 months. Now, that is going to have a broader impact on the so-called box office and collections. I do feel in the next 6-7 months, it will iron out. There will be a time when people will make the money back. They will have their savings will be back to normal. And that's when they will start coming out and again expressing themselves. The whole world, I mean, the top CEOs in the world are warning people that there is a recession going to be hitting. You know, whether it's Jeff Bezos has mentioned it, Elon Musk has mentioned it, businessmen in India are talking about this so-called global recession, which is looming on all of us. And I think everyone's being careful about it. You know, everyone's being careful about it. So I think a lot of what we see is a reflection of that. And we are not an industry which operates in isolation. We are dealing with the most common men who get entertained. They are the ones who are paying and watching our movies. So I feel we all need to be patient. We all need to be accepting of what has happened. And we need to, as you said, that realign that, okay, maybe a 60 crore today is as good as a 80 crore pre-pandemic, or a 80 crores now is as good as 110 crores pre-pandemic. Accept that and say that that's a good step towards getting back to what we were in 2019, right?
Yeah.
And give it some time. Be patient about it. We do everything can't be a knee-jerk reaction. Oh, this film didn't do well, we can't touch this genre. Oh, this film didn't do well, we can't make these kind of movies. Just because a Stars film didn't do well, oh, people don't want to see Stars. I mean, that's not true. People want to see good content. People still believe in the stars. I feel the responsibility is on all of us to just be a bit patient. And I feel when we are panicked, that panic shows on screen.
Yeah, very true.
And when we are relaxed, that relaxation shows on screen. So I feel we should be a bit more patient, a bit more relaxed, and continue doing what we are doing, because we need to do this for the rest of our lives.
And I think it's been a very interesting learning curve, I think, for Hindi cinema this year, because I think, see, I know the whole boycott Bollywood movement has been happening, and I can understand, but then I think also there's two things here. Number one, that the audience needs to, they have the complete right to voice their opinions and to express their, their views and how they feel about certain films. Because let's be honest, there are certain Hindi films or Indian films generally that have been offensive, as there have been Western films that have been offensive too. And I think it's that, but then I also do believe that it's on the impetus on the filmmakers and producers to understand and take on that demand. So I think it's been a very interesting learning curve in that sense. And also from the content we've seen in South, Shashank. And I think what I love about the content from South, which I think Hindi cinema has done before, but somehow has kind of little bit lost along the way, is that human touch, that humanness that's there in the stories that they tell. And I think why films like Drishyam 2 and even perhaps Bhool Bhulaiyaa have done well is because it has that human touch. There is that sense of it really appealing to the common person again, and almost bringing out their struggles and bringing out their sort of sense of escapism that they always love from cinema. So I think that's also been a huge learning curve as well. But I think, look, your next directorial is Bedhadak, and it launches 3 new faces in Hindi cinema. I mean, of course, Shashank, I remember when the pictures had launched on Twitter, there was a lot of conversation about it. There was even a backlash as well. So how are you coping with negativity? How do you deal with that at this point in time?
See, as you rightly said, people have the right to voice their opinions, and they have to do. We need to continue doing what's best for what we believe the film is, or for that matter, whatever the projects that we take up. We need to go and see that what is the best way we can put things forward. When it comes to things like human touch, I don't think so any one of us has lost it. Nobody goes into a film, writing it or directing it, saying that I don't want to make a film which does not kind of connect to the people. I just want to make something which is disconnected from people, and yet it should become a super hit. I think we all are very, very aware of the fact that we are making films. Films are stories. Stories are only told because of human beings. And we are trying to tell those stories so that we connect to more and more people. We are aware of it. We can make some mistakes, and there are going to be films which are good, and there are going to be films which are not very good. That's part of life. I mean, an Indian cricket team goes into every match wanting to win it. but there are times when they don't perform. And at that time, we don't suddenly start questioning their intent.
Right.
We realize that it's a bad day. Similarly, I think everyone out there wants to make the best film. We want to give our best foot forward. It's not that we take our audiences for granted. Every time, even today, when I'm out in any public place, and if someone walks up to me and admires some of my work or praises it, it gives me a sense of great happiness and satisfaction, and also makes me realize that I am doing what I'm doing because of these people. I am here because the audiences values my work, is ready to spend money to watch it, and that is something which drives me even more. That is something which, when I start writing my next film, I believe that I really want to reach out to these people more. If 50 people have watched my film, I want 100 people to watch it. If 100 people have watched it, I want 200 people to watch it. So we are never going to forget it. There have been times when we have failed, and there have been times when we will succeed. There are, in history, even pre-pandemic, we have had years which have been phenomenal, with some great films coming out in a year. And then there have been times when we've had average films coming out the entire year. I think that's part and parcel of the entire world. That's how everyone operates. So I think none of us are ignorant about it or brushing it aside. We are all aware of it. And every day, even when I meet all other film producers, writers, people in general, we're always discussing that, hey, listen, we need to make films for the people. We need to connect to human beings. But at the same time, it's our responsibility to sometimes push the envelope. We're like a fashion designer would want to create something new and yet connect to a person. He can't be always of the thought that red color works, so I'm only going to make red t-shirts for the rest of my life. Right? We're always trying to up the ante. So I think, as I said, it's good to analyze, but I feel a little bit of over-analysis is going to only push you down the hill, and rather it might take away from your originality or the kind of person you are. So I think you need to go back, connect to what inspires you, what you feel at the moment, and make the films you really want to make.
Sure. Now, Bedhadak, again, from the posters, it seems like a very different world to what you've presented before. I mean, it's not your first time where you've launched fresh faces. I mean, even though Ishan had Beyond the Clouds before, but Janvi was a fresh face in Dhadak. So in terms of Bedhadak, how different...
Bedhadak is right now, we're still trying to work out the logistics of it. So I don't know if it is going to be my next film or it's a film that happens a bit later. What the pandemic has done for us is it's thrown away budgets in general haywire. Earlier, accounting for a film was much easier. But just to give you an example, a ticket from India to London has become thrice the price.
That's
how much accounting has gone. And Bedhadak, when we had decided about it, was a film which we were very, very passionate about, something which we wanted to make with a certain budget and really put our best foot forward. But post-pandemic, the logistics of it have been tough to deal with. So that's something which we are still trying to figure out. I can't say with 100% confidence that's my next, but it's something which we are still trying to make work. So hopefully when there's an update on it, I'll be able to speak more in detail about it.
And I think it's been a while since we've all been itching for another Varun and Alia film. I mean, you know how much I love Varun and Alia both, and how much I've adored them over the years. So, I mean, Dulhania 3 again is something which everyone has been waiting for. I mean, I don't know how kaise matlab ye afwahein फैल गई है कि Dulhania 3 होगा, but should you decide to make a Dulhan, like a next film in the Dulhania series, I mean, could we see a more mature stage of the two protagonists that we've been seeing in the franchise? Because obviously they've all kind of gone through this very interesting life journey currently as well.
I mean, first of all, yes, I mean, Dulhania 3 is always exciting. I mean, just working with Varun, Alia, Karan and me coming together is very exciting. It's something, in fact, it's become this, that even if I catch up with them for a cup of tea and it's going to be like, oh, they were discussing Dulhania 3, right? But that's something is always on our minds. We are always looking forward to collaborate together. We also understand the love we have gotten for the franchise, but we're also very responsible about it, that we don't want to make the film just for the heck of it. We want to make a story which we all connect to and want to tell that story. How mature or immature it will be, it all depends on the story. I feel there are certain life experiences you have and you want to adapt that into a movie. But there are certain experiences you feel that, okay, we'll explore it in some other franchise or in another movie. You
Uh-huh.
know, it all depends. As I said, I've become a father in the lockdown, and I view a lot of the world differently. And yet, when I write something, I might not want to use all of that experience in that. It might be just case to case, story to story, right?
Fair enough.
So, like, it's like I don't want to be that irritating parent who keeps going everywhere and says, you know what my daughter did, and the non-parents are like, we don't care, right? So similarly, I think that can translate in storytelling, that why the hell is he boring us? You know, why the hell is he
Yeah.
giving us a worldview when we haven't asked for it? So I
Right.
think we need to isolate what our lives have gone through
Yeah.
and what is the story. So if I decide, for example, to tell the most fun story with the two of them, which at the risk of sounding like that, it's just a simple story without a message but has great fun in it. And if
Mm.
we are excited, we want to tell that story, you
Yeah.
know. Whereas we might say that, hey, we want to tell a story about some social responsibility and give it a sense of entertainment, and we want to go ahead and do that. So I
Yeah.
feel, uh, first of all, it's not a filmmaker's job to educate anybody. If there are
Right.
certain films which educate, great. If there is a certain film which inspire, great. If there are certain films which bring about a social responsibility, great. But if
Mm.
there are certain films just purely entertain, they purely entertain. So I
Sure.
think
Sure. Sure.
whenever the time is right, we will lock the story first, and then based on that, we'll go about writing it and ensuring that that's the best version of the script we want to present.
Well, I think a lot of the Varia fans will be really reassured to know that at least it's still in the back of your mind as long as you're like,
I
it's
don't think so it's in the back of the mind. I mean, whenever we catch up, it's on our lips. It's literally, we are
Oh,
talking about
amazing.
it all the time, that
Good.
what do we do? But as I said, we are all responsible. We are understanding the responsibility which comes with it. We are also understanding the fact that, you know, they're a very loved couple,
Yeah.
and people everywhere, wherever we go, we are always asked that question.
Oh,
Even Varun is, Alia, me.
yeah,
But
yeah,
as I said, we don't want to do it just for the gimmick of it or for the financial reward of it. We
yeah.
want to do it because all four of us want to work together and make a good film again.
Definitely. Well, on a final note as well, Shashank, as well, because I know you've got a lot on. Your next production is Yodha, and you've always said that it's always about what you want to explore next, and as a filmmaker, the sort of identity you want to show. But obviously that's a complete action thriller, like you mentioned, it's a hijack sort of story. So how has backing this movie as a producer, I guess, helped you to understand and learn the intricacies of an action caper? I mean, should you choose to actually direct one in the future, how has that helped you?
Oh, it's helped me immensely, because just seeing the process my directors and my EPs and everyone put into it, and then being actively involved in the scripting and speaking to the action directors, just sometimes being on set, observing the way it was created, I realized the kind of patience, the technical knowledge, the so-called vision you need to have for the film, so that right in the beginning, how do you do your pre-production correctly? So it's been a great learning curve for me as well. Though I was the one with experience backing these youngsters, but just seeing how meticulously they have gone through the project has made me realize that if I ever choose to make an action film, what are the ingredients required for it? What is the prep time required for it? How clear I have to be in my explanation of the action to my action director? What are the do's? What are the don'ts? Uh, how sometimes technically challenging it can be. But that's the beauty of producing, right? That
Yeah.
you take on a genre which you are not adept at,
Yes.
but along the journey, you start realizing that, oh, there are so many of these things that I can learn and
Hmm.
probably make in my next film. So I think it's been a great experience. It's been a beautiful learning experience. And then, yet, when you see it come together, you realize
Hmm.
that we've created something which people will be excited about.
And it's your first time working with Siddharth as well, right? So I'm sure that must have been very lovely to kind of see
Oh, it's been superbly
action.
exciting, just to see him, his process, how much he has grown as an actor, and also as a professional, as a technician, how much he's ready to give into the film. He's in fact had the experience of doing a couple of action films before,
Yeah.
whether it was a Sher Shah and earlier, and then you start understanding that how an actor with experience can actually enrich the project. and really help us take it to a level that we didn't imagine it could reach. So I think that's been beautiful. And as I said, it's been a great learning experience and something which I will always cherish and use from whenever I get to make my action film.
That's amazing. Well, look, I mean, Shashank, it's always such a pleasure to have you on Filme Shilmy. Honestly, I could hear you all day, honestly. Like, it's so lovely to have this chat with you. But wishing you all the very best for
Thank
Govinda
you.
Naam Mera and all upcoming projects. And yes, I'm keeping my fingers crossed for all the films that we've discussed, and hopefully it all materializes super soon.
Great. Thank you so
Right.
much. All the
Thank you,
best.
Shashank.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.